Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Killout404. I know it's been a while, but I think I have the direction for this channel moving forward, at least for right now. If you're new to the channel, basically I'm gonna be a dude on the internet. I'm a Nintendo fan. I love Nintendo games and you know, the Nintendo universe. I'm just gonna be uploading videos about the news and interesting games that come out, just basically talking about them in a commentary style. About a bunch of stuff that happens in the Nintendo universe. I used to be a gamer. I used to play Nintendo games a lot, but you know, since I'm an adult now, I don't have time to do that anymore. But I still care about games and this universe and things that happen in the Nintendo world of things. So, like for example, when a new game comes out, I like to watch video reviews and I like to watch YouTube content from other content creators. That's how I kind of enjoy my games nowadays, vicariously through other people. Just because, like I said, I don't have time anymore to actually physically sit down and play the games. I'm just too busy. So you know, because I don't have time to play the games, this is the format that I want to do, just because it's not that much overhead for me to spend the time to talk about the news, and a lot of the times, you know, it's pretty interesting stuff, and I do want to give, you know, my commentary and 2 cents on a lot of things, because sometimes I can really relate to the topic. So that's kind of the direction I'm going. Hopefully you guys like that. And another apology, maybe sometimes the news won't be like late breaking news, like right at the very moment, you know, so the news might come on the weekday and I might do a video on the weekend, so the news might be a little bit stale. So hopefully you guys don't mind that too much. Like today's topic, which is going to be about Nintendo accused of mistreating their employees. Oh no, big bad Nintendo. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this, and that's going to be the topic for today's video. So in a nutshell, basically Nintendo of America, not NOJ, surprisingly, because NOJ, a lot of these complaints about you know, worker abuse, employees working way too much with no overtime, etc., that usually comes in the form of game developers. I feel like in the gaming world, it's usually the game developers that are the target of these, not the target, but the source of these complaints. You know, because a lot of times they're overworked just to get a game out on time, for example. This article is not about NOJ, and just to remind everybody, NOJ is the mothership. Nintendo of Japan, they're the mothership. They kind of decide everything. They decide what games are made. They decide when the games are coming out. And so in a way, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is true, they're just sort of like a marketing layer, a localization layer, a translation layer. They feed off of NOJ and basically kind of are the liaison for America, right? Maybe they're involved with like the release of the English trailers or something like that, but they're not the ones physically making the games. It's the companies over in Japan. So this struck me as kind of odd, because again, normally you hear these complaints from the developers, but this time it's coming from people who are non-developers. So that's actually really bad in my opinion. So there's even abuse going beyond game developers. So there's been, you know, some allegations of things like, you know, low pay, no benefits, contract work only, not full-time, you know, but contract work, which is of course worse. You get less pay and benefits and things like that sometimes, right? There's been accusations of union busting where, you know, you're not allowed to talk about any sort of union creation or collecting bargaining agreement. And basically you guys know that, you know, unions are basically organizations where you can unionize, you can get together, and you're not gonna collectively do any work for anybody unless like there's some agreement to say like, hey, we're gonna get this amount of pay, overtime pay and hours. Think of like a laborers union for construction, right? Because without that, you know, there could be huge abuse of you know, making workers, cutting them bad deals, making them work overtime for little pay, things like that, not giving them health insurance and vacation time and benefits. That's probably happened before, and so, you know, now there's a labor union, and it cuts both ways. We can talk about that later, because now that there's a union, you know, buildings cost more because the labor costs more, and the buildings probably, you know, because they're only allowed to work 8 hours a day, most often than not, the buildings are delayed. And there's definitely a parallel to video games. So yeah, like it's not good. I'm very pro worker. You know, I work in America, so I definitely care about good pay and benefits and things like that. And it's kind of sad again to see that this is not even coming from the developers. This is coming from like marketing people and, you know, other types of people that are not the game developers. That, to me, that's kind of crazy. It's like, wow, you're gonna really try to screw over those people, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's kind of messed up. It's kind of messed up to take advantage of people, and I'm actually a guy that wants to meet in the middle. It cuts both ways, like I said. So the game analogy is basically, if there are unions for people who, you know, let's include the game developers. Let's also include the people who do the marketing and the other stuff that NOA does, right? Let's just include everybody. If you unionize and you have to purchase work basically from the unions, obviously companies are in it to make a profit, and they're just going to push the cost to the consumers. So games, because they have to pay overtime pay, as an example, maybe in the past they got away with it. Now with these crunch hours, right? Oh, you have to work crunch hours and you're going to get burned out, unfortunately, but we have to make this deadline. And so you're going to work nights and weekends and extra hours, and we're not going to pay you, right? So if there was a union and they had to pay the extra overtime and all this extra money to these employees, basically because they're behind schedule, then the games are going to cost more. They're going to just push the cost to the consumer. And so games might cost like $90 or $120 or something like that. And I'm pretty sure consumers are not going to like that, right? I think games have been relatively cheap over these last couple of like a decade or something like that, right? Because a game costs $60. I'm not sure, maybe an Xbox game or a PlayStation game costs $70 nowadays, but you know, with inflation and things like that, I think game prices have been pretty like stagnant. They've been kind of the same, right? It went from like 50 to 60 and maybe now 70 over a really long period of time. So let's be fair, the game prices have been pretty steady, because other things, you know, especially with all this inflation, things have gone like way up. Okay, so how do you feel though about paying $90, $120? I'm pretty sure that's going to affect a lot of people, right? Because the gaming space is so large, the consumer base is so large, that it's not just like rich people buying games, for example. It's people from all across the spectrum. So it's definitely going to affect the consumer, and they're most likely not going to buy as much games as they've done before. Like, you're really only going to be purchasing the games that you want to play, and not really branching out. So that really hurts a lot of, you know, it hurts you, the consumer, because you don't get to enjoy more games. And then it even hurts like the smaller developers, not the AAA games like Call of Duty, you know, and Mario, but like, you know, the side games that are kind of okay but not a lot of people play. Like, those companies and those games will really suffer, maybe even to a point that you don't see them anymore. So franchises might die. So there is definitely an effect, right, with unions. It cuts both ways, like I keep saying. And then there's not only the games that are going to be more expensive, but if you know, maybe, you know, there's no free overtime and they're not, you know, they want to not pay more people to come in on the project, then, you know, games might be delayed. So instead of, I don't know, what's the Nintendo game coming out? Breath of the Wild, you know, instead of, I think it's already been delayed, but let's say, you know, they had to work through unions, you may not see that game until 2024. That's like 2 years away, you know, instead of 1 year away. So it's like, do you want to wait, you know, maybe 6 months, 9 months, a year later for your games, you know, with unions? That will probably hurt. So you're not going to see a Mario game every 6 years. You might see a Mario game every 8 years or something like that. So I don't know. It's like, I asked myself the question too, like, you know, I kind of don't like that myself. Like, I want the games to be at a steady price, and I want the games to come out immediately so I can talk about things. And people, you know, I'm pretty sure gamers want to have their games early to play them, and YouTubers want to have the games out so they can make their content, right? So I would be in favor of something in the middle, you know, where there is like a union, there is a collective bargaining agreement, but it's kind of fair for both sides. So that, you know, I don't mind spending a little bit more money knowing in my head that the workers are better off, but at the same time, I am a consumer too, you know. I'm kind of selfish. I don't want to wait very long times for games, and I don't want games to be overly expensive. So I wish there was a way to strike a deal in the middle, because I understand both sides, but, you know, I'll lean more towards the worker just because that's who I am and I care about that stuff. So yeah, not good. Another thing too, another takeaway from this, And this also just might be like industry wide. Unfortunately, Nintendo might just be another cog in the wheel, similar to all these other companies. You know, like Activision Blizzard had their whole fallout last year of mistreatment of workers and so on and so forth. You know, an important thing to also to take away from this is that even though Nintendo sort of has the good guy face and they're always looked as the good guy, they have like the really great characters and they're always seen as like a family friendly, that sort of thing. You always have to remember that it's also a company trying to make money, right? Trying to make a profit. And so let's peel back the layers of like don't judge a book by its cover, you know, peel back the layers and really see what's going on. So it's good to keep people in check despite how great they are, basically. Just that's all I'm saying, right? Nintendo might be like a really great company on the surface, and it is a good company, but you know, let's keep them in check. It's not cool that if this is true, again, these are all allegations, but if this is true, you know, it's not cool. So we got to keep people in check, and that's all I'm saying. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Hopefully you guys like this format, and I this is all I'm gonna do every week. I'm gonna look for something to talk about. It might be a new game, it might be E3, even though E3 is kind of canceled, but let's talk. You know, there's always going to be Nintendo Direct, so there's always something to talk about, I feel like, in a weekly cadence. So let's see where this goes. Okay, see you guys next time. Peace.